everyone, this is Joy, and I come to you from an unnamed creek in Hope, Alaska. And I'm doing my presentation from here. I took my family on a trip, and I was hoping to do this over the internet on Screencast-O-Matic, but unfortunately I have no internet out here, so I will be recording this and then uploading it tomorrow morning. Anyways, I thought you all might enjoy this view because my paper is on ecotourism and emotional effect. So I'm going to walk into our cabin here. So this is what ecotourism is like. I am taking advantage of the beauty of this area. However, it doesn't always have the best effects. We'll get to that in just a moment here. So, here we go. Ripple in environmental impact, an emotional experience. So, the economic impact of tourism employed 38,700 people and created $3.92 billion in total spending back in 2014. So a total of 1,932,600 visitors came from out of state in that fiscal year. But what other impacts does tourism have in and on Alaska? So there's quite a few. Why this study? So here we go. Should the connection be left for the indigenous people, or should it be shared with others as well, i.e. me? If it's the latter, what impact does it have on the environment and the people of Alaska sans economy? So for this paper, I researched tourism, climate change, and interviewed both indigenous and Western individuals to illuminate the findings of the questions asked. So during the making of this presentation, I took a turn, and what I wanted to do is show what Alaska looks like to tourists with the impact of tourism, but also from military. So, for an example, this is a picture of a nuclear silo that's actually out in hunting grounds in the YTA up by Fairbanks. Today we went to Exit Glacier, and a lot of visitors come there because they want to see the glacier and they want to see the impact of what the environment has done to the glacier. So here's actually a picture of the parking lot leading up to the glacier. All the RVs that are letting off all those gases. So here's an empty picture holder. And the reason why this is significant is because they had to remove the information from this stand and move it up because the glacier has receded so much that they had to move the sign. This is now the glacier. The glacier 10 years ago was all the way down to the point where we are standing at this picture. Here's some of the reasons why. So this is a picture of all of the garbage that we picked up within an hour's time off of something that folks find interesting because of the tourist impact on the environment. So, how sustainable tourism with its continued lack of attention to environmental impact? How sustainable is tourism? The EPA points to the impact on Alaska Native communities. This is obviously another important issue. And the EPA says the loss of sea ice restricts the subsistence lifestyle of groups such as the Yupik, Inupiat, and Inuit by limiting hunting grounds and reducing habitat for traditional food sources such as walrus. Considering this is a part of the lure of Alaska, and it's the viewing of the other. So the other is a term coined by Edward Said in Orientalism, and it's to refer to the person other than yourself. So you view yourself by looking at the other. So if this is what we're doing, it is unclear as to why tourism agencies are not showing more concern for the well-being of the Inupiats, the Yupiks, the Inuit, and the rest of us here in Alaska. So what happens elsewhere? Down in Antarctica, or up, there are rules in place to, quote, advocate, promote, and practice environmentally responsible private sector travel to Antarctica through the Antarctica tour operators. Despite these and other efforts, such as Project Antarctica Conservation, to bring attention to the effects of tourism, many nations have not widely supported research directed at tourism impacts. So Stewart et al. Conclude that a plan is needed to promote tourism research in order to retain polar region status as the Earth's last terrestrial wilderness. So what that means, the reason why I brought that up, I'm going to back up here, is during my research I found that the tourism agencies in Alaska do not mention how we should be practicing environmental responsibility. So in areas in Antarctica where it is advocated and promoted, it is for some reason not being brought to Alaska. So we all read Benton for this paper, or excuse me, for this class. And we talked about how there is a commodified persona that involves the representation of cultural uniformity as a simplifying trope, and it's self-exoticizing as the other, polyvocal alternatives of identity culled from a repertoire of possibilities and rejection of stereotyping through covert acts of resistance. So what does this mean in plain English? What this means is that a person is selling his or her culture for the enjoyment of others. Now, this is a positive thing. The reason why it's a positive thing is because then others can learn about the culture and perhaps respect it. However, that person is having to sell him or herself to be able to make a dollar. The positive side of tourism. Wow, according to this slide, there's nothing. But according to this slide, there's communitatis. So in one of the papers that I read, it was a travel of Dalton Highway by anthropologists, and they were gauging the happiness of people. And they talked to one woman who said, she's 62 years old, while traveling to Cold Foot and to Prudhoe Bay by bus, I spotted a wolf on the side of the highway. The body language, his stance, and the sit of his head showed me a timidness. I saw a wild animal not just feeding or wandering, but being more characteristic of his species. Upon being disturbed by the passing vehicles, he turned slowly and calmly walked behind the bushes and trees. However, I do work at the Large Animal Research Station in Fairbanks, and what I do there, I'm a tour guide. So after one of the tours, a lady came into the gift shop, and she grabbed 3 skeins of kiviat, which is the underwool of the muskox, and said, I'm getting these now before they're all gone. So this was not an expression of sadness. It was not one of environmental concern. She wanted that because she said, quote, they're going to be an heirloom. So this is a table of the experiences that people had during the visit up to the Dalton Highway. So it shows emotions. So there's pleasure, happiness, and enjoyment, and the numbers of mentions were 67. So there were 31% of the people that showed these things. So I'll put this up on our on Blackboard, and so that you all can see this a little bit better than this non-technical way. So, conclusion. As a tour guide at Lars, I see the wonderment in visitors' eyes. So I do love that as part of tourism. There are many that are concerned about climate change. They love the muskox and they're told what climate change is doing to them and their environment. But does the concern go with them back to the lower 48? People have a short attention span. There needs to be a long-lasting effort to continue the care of Alaska through tourism. As a librarian, I feel that education as part of tourism, it already happens, is imperative. But instead of the focus being on economics and policymakers and business, people need to follow the lead of other countries and even other states in their numbers of how animals are harvested. Now it is time to make sure that the flora and the fauna and individuals of Alaska are sustainable too. So one last look outside so that we can finish this on a high note. We want to look at undisturbed Alaska. And here it is. Thank you so much for your time.